Hey, what's up guys? In this video series we're going to be going over Sylenth1. This will get you started with this particular synth, very popular. In this video it's the intro, UI, and presets. So the intro is basically over. Right now we're going to go over the basic UI. Alright, so it is a two-part, two-oscillator synthesizer, right? So you have part A and part B, remember that. Part A, you have oscillator 1 and 2, so two oscillators, two filters, right? Routable. You have your effects section here, Arpeggiator, Distort, Phaser, Chorus, EQ, Delay, Reverb, and Compressor, right? All good and fun stuff. A global kind of, you can't change the Amplifier Envelope. You have two assignable envelopes per part, two Lfos per part, and a little bit of a Modulation Matrix here, which is a source and destination. Down here you have a keyboard, pitch bend, modulation. So this is another way. So if you have the mod wheel, we'll get into this. You have the mod wheel mapped to resonance, or you can have it mapped to basically anything really. Mono and legato. Up at the top here you have a polyphony, right? So one voice would be like monophonic. You can have up to 16. And you have your voice count here. Again, part A and B. Again, solo. You can solo each part independently. So it's really easy to layer sounds. And yeah, MIDI learn and sync, which is good for, you know, syncing your arpeggiator and all your effects and LFOs to your host. All right, so presets. You have each bank has 4 sets of 128 different patches, and you go through it like so, and altogether there's 512, I think. Yeah, 512, right? So there's a lot in there. You can load your banks, save your bank. You can load a single preset, one that you save from like another project. You can copy paste, insert preset, delete preset, just to do a bit of management. There's lots of presets available for this. I plan on making a few. Or 1 or 2. You can register, you can check for updates. I recommend doing that. And there you have it. You can just cycle through. Right? And you have a whole plethora of sounds, all tweakable. Everything is on one page. It's a very nice synth to work with. Quick, easy, perfect. There's a reason why it's popular, and that's probably because of that. It came out 2008 or 6, one of those numbers, and it was very popular because of its ability to have multiple voices per oscillator, which we will get into. Yeah, hope you are excited. We're gonna get going, and take care, and we'll be back. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over parts, the mixer, and the signal path, basic signal path of the synthesizer. Alright, so you basically, how some synthesizers, they go left to right. This one goes top to bottom, basically. So you have your 2 parts here. Remember that, you have 2 parts. We will init right now. We initted, that's always fun to do, and that gives us a plain slate. Right, simple saw. You have each oscillator in their own respectful little modules right here, right? And then that is controlled by your amplifier envelope here, which is like the changes of your amplitude, so you can have it fade in. We'll get into that. Each of these goes into a filter, right? So we can have oscillator A going into filter A, and oscillator AB going into filter A, right? So we can kind of route them if you want. Oscillator 2 or oscillator B to go into the filter, or not go into it, you can do that. And it's all well and fun. And you can completely bypass them. All right, so we'll just have it like that. We have the filter going into our effects section here. And then it goes in a linear way, right? So it goes into distortion, the phaser, the chorus, the EQ, the delay, reverb, and compressor, and you can't rearrange these, but you don't need to because that's how it gets its sound, and that's what you want. The arpeggiator is kind of like a MIDI effect, so it kind of goes into the gate before everything else. So imagine it up here. All right, so yeah, it goes from that, and then it goes out to this mixer section, right? So you have mix A and B, part A and part B. It's all super fun, and you can mix them, and your maximum volume is over here. Simple mixer section, not rocket appliances. You have your modulation section here. Now this will modulate almost every parameter here, right? And this little drop-down menu here. Your cutoff, you can do some cool stuff with your cutoff. Right? You can do all sorts of neat stuff. Much like the amplifier envelope, you can do cool stuff with the cutoff, which is good for plucks and like basses and such. Lfos is just another oscillator, but it affects certain things like the pitch. Right, you can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. And your modulation source. So you can have the source say how hard you press the key, your mod wheel. You can have your mod wheel affecting the, no, not the pitch, the cutoff. Why not? And we'll just give that a value. Right, good for kind of a performance aspect. That is the general signal path, right? So these are the bottom. These aren't necessarily part of the signal. They're just injected into separate parts here, right? And you can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. It's a great synth to learn on. Again, you have part A and B, and the filter control and all these modulations are shared between parts A and part B. So you can have kind of a master filter controlling both filter A and filter B, right? And yeah, that is the basic parts, the mixer and the signal path. Hope you learned stuff. Hopefully it wasn't overwhelming. We'll get into some more fun stuff, and hope you take care and have a good one. We'll be back. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over the oscillator sections. Now, there's 4 oscillators, 2 for each part. So if you understand this little module here, you understand all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to init and just have a basic patch here. Right, so we have our little oscillator A1 here. We have pitch control on the left here, so we can have it an octave, which is like an octave up, so 12 semitones. Right, you can do that, and you can mix and match them. Different oscillators playing at different kind of octaves to create warm harmonics and such. You have a note kind of detuned, so you can make like inharmonics and like weird bell tones. Plus or minus 7, so you could do cool stuff like this and like, right, very Mowgli-ish, right? And that's your pitch. Now, how you enable the oscillator is really important, and it's this little voices option down here, right? So if it's 0 voices, there's no voices. You can see our voice count up here, 0, 0. We can press a bunch of buttons and nothing's going to happen at all, and that's not good. We can drag it up to 1. We can drag it up to 2. Right, so these are just saws being stacked up. And there's some really fun things we can do with those voices, which we'll get into. Fine tune. Invert, which kind of, you know how it's like a sawtooth wave? It'll invert it, it'll flip it upside down, which could be useful for some people. Sounds like pretty much the same. But what it does is if you have it synced, it does some pretty cool stuff. Retrigger, what that will do is that will start it at a cycle, and I'll just show you. Actually, I should have this open. This is a signal analyzer from rs-meta.com. It's free, you can check it out, and it's a great learning tool. I totally forgot it. So I'll show you what the inverting does. Right, so you can create interesting harmonics when you combine those with different ones. Where was I? retrigger. Doesn't do anything, but in context with another sound, right? So we'll just detune these slightly. Right, they all start at the exact same point, right? And you can see that there. Right, that's two saw waves going on at once. If we turn off retrigger for one of them, right, they're just free running. One of them is free running, the other one is retriggered. And that's good for basses and such. All right, I'll init again. Right, these knobs here, this would be a volume. Right, so it's kind of like a pre-mixer before your mixer. That'd be useful if you have a white noise. White noise is very loud. Right, so if you have one sound and then like another. Right, you can get something analog. I'll init again. So right now, hopefully I'm not being too confusing. I'm using two oscillators at once. And yeah, if you understand one of them, you understand them all, basically. So yeah, I'm just giving you examples. Just focus on this one right here. Click init and just find out what everything does. Phase. It will start the phase as to where it starts playing. I'll give you another example of that. So if we have two saw waves or two square waves, and they're both kind of starting at the same time, we can adjust the phase of one of them. So they're re-triggered, right? And they're both kind of playing at the same time, but one's starting before the other, and the other one is kind of canceling it out. I'll give you a better example. We'll have one saw and one square. Right, so you can make a sound bite more just by changing the phase as to where it lands. Always good and fun. This is kind of advanced, but whatever. All right, so remember how I said we have our voices here? We have the ability to increase it up to 8 voices. Right, so we've basically stacked 8 sawtooths on top of each other, and when you stack them up, you just get volume, basically. What we can do is we can detune them. With this detune spread, right, so you have a very deep sound, and this is where you get that trance kind of sound. It sounds like that because it's being re-triggered. All of these are being started at the same time, and then they go out of phase. If we turn off re-trigger, it sounds more proper. Right, so re-trigger would be good for pads and leads. Wait, re-trigger off would be good for pads and leads. Right, but when you go down to the bass sounds, you want it to re-trigger, so you have that bite of that bass every time, so you don't lose your bass. That's just another tip that might be overwhelming. Stereo spread, so you can kind of collapse all this down to mono. Right, so that'd be good if you want that to just be a layer of another synth. You want like a really kind of wide centered thing. Pan. That's very useful, and you can do really neat tricks like adjust. Here, I'll just show you. You can make 2 of these. Right? Turn off re-trigger. Right, so we have, 2 8 voice detuned saws. We can even further detune them left and right with the fine tune, and then pan them left and right. So you have a very wide signal. You have 8 plus 8 is 16. So one note is 16 saws. Right? You can get some really deep sounds. And that's the basic oscillator layout. It's all about how you gotta figure them out like on their own. So what I want you to do, if you want, just hit that init button, grab this little signal analyzer, and see what's going on. One thing I didn't mention is the wave selection. Oops. So you have different wave selections here. I'm sure that would be readily apparent. You have sine, which is a basic pure sine wave, one harmonic. You have your saw, which we were working with. Our triangle, a bit more harmonic than our sine wave. Square, pulse, another pulse, and just see what they sound like and what they look like. And what's this one? It's a triangular saw. Right, good for basses, and our white noise. I don't know why it's entirely too loud, but I guess that's where, I guess they wanted the volume to be used for something. All right, hopefully, yeah, that was about 8 minutes, not too bad. All right, so yeah, I want you to play around with this and then see what this does when you combine these two, and how retrigger works and how they sync together, and you can do some really cool stuff. All right, that was the oscillator sections, and hope you learned stuff, and take care. Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over the filters. So part A and part B are basically the same. Gotta get that in there again. Each part has its own filter, and the filter controls both of them at the same time. Right? You can do some really interesting things with that. So we're going to just focus on part A for now. You can route oscillator A independently, and you can have oscillator B just going straight through, right? And you can change the routing this way. So that'd be good for like a sound if you wanted to have like a deep kind of like a deep sound, and then some harmonics just going clean right through the filter on Oscillator A2. You can do that, but we're just going to focus on a single thing here. So oops. Right, so we have it engaged. I will show you what we do. Right, so we have our spectrum analyzer here. So this is our fundamental, I assume. We have all of these harmonics, right? Harmonics make things sound cool. You add harmonics with distortion and EQ. Well, you accentuate harmonics with EQ. And with filters, you take away harmonics. All right, so basically for filters, you have, in Sylenth1 anyways, you have complete bypass, this is flat. Nothing's going on here. You have low pass. So low pass is a traditional filter. You have your cutoff point. Right, so that cuts out the lower, or it cuts out the upper harmonics and then leaves the lower ones behind. Right, so low pass filter. Right, kind of looks like that. Resonance will boost the point at cutoff. Boost the point of cutoff. Right, so if you want to accentuate those harmonics there, these are all done with like rows of capacitors and all sorts of crazy stuff. You have your bandpass, which is, wait, we'll go high pass. So we have our high pass. It lets through all of the upper harmonics. Right, so that's good if you want, you know, like a lead or something, you want your upper harmonics to be left alone. You don't want any low end mucking about in there. Right, you can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. You have bandpass, which is a high pass and a low pass put together, basically. Right, so it's a high pass and a low pass put together, essentially. And all these, what all of these do is it shapes the sound. It's like, why would you want to do that? Well, you have, oh wait, I'll end it again. Right, so we have, we'll get something simple here. A square wave here, right? We want to change the shape of that square wave. And you can do that with like additive synthesis and FM, but the real magic is with these filters. Right, you can do all sorts of fun stuff. Right, but when you do that, you take away harmonics, and that's not good. That's why you have filter drive, which is essentially an analog kind of characteristic of sound, where you take the input signal and then drive that and saturate the filter, and then the filter doesn't know what to do with it, and it just kind of gets passed through. Kind of like a guitar pedal, how an electric guitar sounds a lot more, you know, electric than when you run it through certain amps. Certain amps have different characters. The drive is the character. Right, so we can use this and I'll show you. Right, so we took away harmonics. We can add them back in. Right, so we can add a character with no drive. Sounds thin like before, but we drive it. Right, very interesting how that works. Another thing I didn't mention is each of these filter modules, they have a 12 and a 24. These basically mean a cutoff intensity. So I'm going to drop in a white noise here. Right, so we have a white noise going into our low pass filter here, and it's at 24 dB per octave. At 12, it's a little less intense, so it's less of an intense slope, right? So you can have like 48 dB per octave kind of cut. Different filters have different sounds, but for this you only have 12 and 24, which is traditional, and that's kind of what you need. Right, so you can do all sorts of neat stuff. And it's all about harmonics control and how you shape the harmonics. So if you have, say, this right here, you have your filter control here, and this is kind of independent. Well, it controls part A and part B at the same time. So if you have a low pass here and a low pass here, you can control them both with this filter control, and then add more resonance. Right, and kind of stack up resonance and do all sorts of fun stuff that way. And yeah, it's a very smooth filter. And yeah, those are your two filters. You can route them, and you can have this one just going straight through. Wait. Confused myself there. But yeah, that's basically how it works. And yeah, that's our filters. So take care and have a good one. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over envelopes. So we have a kind of a boring sound there. Looks kind of weird. And what happens is, when you press a key, sound starts immediately. When you let go of the key, sound stops immediately, right? How we change that is with an envelope, or an envelope, however you want to say it. And in the middle here, we have a hard mapped kind of amplifier envelope here. And we can adjust everything about it. The attack, decay, sustain, release, ADSR. So sustain is the overall maximum volume. Right? Not a whole lot exciting going on with that, but when you have the decay and the sustain, together, they do all sorts of fun things. So when you look at an ADSR, the D and the S, decay and sustain, really work well together. Right, you can make some really interesting pads and such, and when you can kind of reset them by having them both up here, and it goes back to where it was. There's no decay. Attack and release would be the gradual increment of how it fades up and then fades down. Right, see, it's gradual. So that sounds rather ye olde. Release is how long it takes for the sound to fade out. Right, and you can have it very long. Right, and that is for just amplitude or volume. Right, you can do other fun things with your envelopes. You have two down here, and you can assign any of them to anything, really. Right, so we have our filter, our saw going into our filter, and we want to kind of do the same thing with our volume our amplitude with the filter. So we can just go drop down, cut off A, bring this down. You can bring this up. Right, so there's no sustain. We can bring that up. Right, so it's kind of doing the same thing, but it's doing it with the cutoff. Right, so you got a nice little pluck going on there. Right, you can map other things to it, like volume. Whereas you can have two amplitude envelopes going on at the same time to kind of create kind of like weird evolving type things. Pitch. And this is the amount. Right, you can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. Sorry about that. My nose is being a sinus. And yeah, you can have two of these and you can map two sources to each one. Right, and you can do all sorts of neat stuff with that. And that is basically your envelopes. So ADSR envelope, there you go. All right, take care and have a good one. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over Lfos. We already went over envelopes or envelopes, and they're just one-shot changes over time. So sound goes up, attack, decay, to sustain, and release. All right, so what if we want it to cycle like an oscillator? Oscillator simply cycles. So this is basically an oscillator, but it's a very low frequency. So low frequency oscillator, LFO. You can map it to all sorts of fun stuff like pitch. So we have a rate, which is how fast it is. You can have it free or synced to our host. We'll have it free for now. So it's at hertz or time. So we'll have it at hertz, which is cycles per second. So 1 hertz, there it is, would be 1 cycle a second. And we'll map that to pitch A, give it a value, positive value, and then gain is the amount. Right, so every second we have a cycle. We can change it to a saw. Or some sort of weird sample and hold. This is sample and hold. Right, and we can just generally change it up. We can have random. All sorts of fun analog style LFOs. You can do a lot of cool stuff with this. You can also map it to cutoff. You can map it to pitch and cutoff. Cutoff and resonance. Right, you can change the offset, so that's where it starts. So it's kind of like the phase of this. If you have two LFOs going and you want them to kind of evolve at random, you'd have them free running with the offset off. If you want them to kind of start at the same time, have them as, say, another envelope, you can with our saw wave here. Right, so we'll turn on sync. Right, all sorts of cool stuff you can do with the LFO. Also, yeah, so just as an example of how it would work, say if you wanted to make some sort of lead, right, you'd map this to, I say map because I've played World of Warcraft for way too many years of my life. Pitch, slight, rate, fast, gain. Right, so we're giving the pitch some movement with the detune, so you get some really crazy sounds going on there, and that is with the LFO. So you have two, and they're global between parts A and parts B, and 2 envelopes and 2 Lfos. All right, we'll be back, I promise. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over modulation sources and destinations. This box here, MISC1 and MISC2. So what is this? This is a modulation matrix. It's a basic one, but it has source and destination, source and destination. There's 4 of them, right? And they're global between part A and B. If you already know how an LFO works, you have your source, which is the LFO, and you have your destination, which would be the pitch. So you have the source being the LFO modulating the pitch. Right? So we have source, destination. This works in pretty much the exact same way. And it's really cool how it works. It's flexible and it makes sense. So we'll have LFO, okay, so we have a variety of different sources. One would be the mod wheel traditionally, which is this guy down here. Your MIDI keyboard might have one, mine's over there. And this can be a destination. So you can have this, let's say, mapped to cutoff. Oh, might want to do that. Right, so the source of the mod wheel, when I increase the mod wheel value, it's adjusting the cutoff of filter A. You could do also all sorts of fun things. Another traditional way of going about this is we'll go LFO1 gain, right? So the mod wheel controls the gain of LFO1, and then we can go pitch. Right, so we have this, changing this, right? So in turn, we have our mod wheel increasing the vibrato of this pitch guy here, which is pretty cool. Might not want to have it that much, but it's just an example. You can do other cool stuff, like we can have LFO, the LFO of one LFO, adjusting the gain of itself, which doesn't make any sense. We can have multiple kind of sources, more than just 2 for each of these modulation sources, if that makes any sense. So we can have pitch and reso, and then we can have mix A and B. So LFO1 is modulating pitch, resonance, cutoff, and the mix of B for some reason. So we can get like amplitude modulation. Right? You can get all sorts of weird stuff. It's really useful for, your modulation envelope 1. You can have an evolving pad of like a cutoff, and then maybe a little bit of pitch. These knobs here are mounts. And then you can have envelope 1 modulating, let's say, the distortion amount, volume, will that be an envelope? Pan. So you can really dig in there and make some weird analog sounds. Right? Yeah, and you have all these sources. Modulation sources, so envelope 1, 2, LFO 1 and 2, and we already know how those work. You can also have the amplifier envelope, key track, which is how high you go up in the keyboard. So it's kind of like as you go up the keyboard, the value will increase. Aftertouch is pressure sensitivity, and step velocity is for the arpeggiator, and we might get into that. Remind me. All right. That is the best explanation I can do. Simply put, if you understand how this works, you have your source and your destination. Source, destination. Pretty simple. All right. Hope you learned stuff, and take care. What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to be going over the arpeggiator. It's not necessarily an effect, but it's the first effect you'll run into. That doesn't make any sense, but okay. So we're going to enable the arpeggiator, right, we have time, which is how fast, you know, it repeats. I like 16s. Right, you could do that. Gate is how long the note is played for. So 0 would be silence. 100 would be full length. 50% is halfway. All right, cool. We got that. We have an octave, so it can go up or down. Well, it can go up 4 octaves. Right, and we have different modes, so we can go up or down. Right now it's going up, we can go down. We can go up, down. Right? You understand how an arpeggiator works. Right? And you can do all sorts of fun stuff. Random is just random. Ordered is how you play it with, if you're playing more than one note, so you'd want to turn this off. Right. Step and chord. Chord would be if you want to play more than one note at the same time. Right. But if you don't have chord on, if you play more than one note at the same time, it just kind of acts as an arpeggiator. Right, so this is basically how an arpeggiator works. There's an arpeggiator and then there's a sequencer or a step sequencer thing. Now there's multiple modes, but the one you want to take a look at is step and key. Right, so we can go up 12, down. Right, so you can do really cool stuff with this. Right, so we have a step and hold here, and we can turn the gate down. So what hold does is it ignores the gate. Right, see that elongated note there? We'll exaggerate that. I'm getting distracted. There's 2 pages, and as far as I know, you can't set it to just have 1 page. You have to have 2, unless you retrigger it. Right, so we can have this. Right, so you have like an acid 303 thing going on. Right, all sorts of fun stuff with the arpeggiator. It's very fun to play around with. It's not necessarily an effect, but it's pretty close to an effect. Doesn't actually color the sound, but you know, all right. Hope you learned stuff, and blah, 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 blah. Hey, what's up, guys? In this video, I'm going over distortion. So there's 2 types of distortion. There's this distortion section here, and there's digital, and then there's analog distortion. So overdrive and foldback are analog distortion. Clip, decimate, and decrush are digital. So these are your 5 flavors, and you have them all here. So overdrive, so what I'll do, actually, yeah, I'll do overdrive first. So we will take a sine wave. I'll just turn this off. Right, so we have a sine wave here. Right, one single harmonic, no, you know, harmonics kind of like you would have with a saw, you know, lots of harmonics there, very pretty. Square or sine wave, no harmonics. Well, one harmonic. It's a basic sound. It's the sound of the universe. All right, so let's drive that. So what that does is it's much like running it through a guitar string through an amplifier. You get rich harmonics, right? So even with the amount at 0, you have a harmonic there. Pretty cool. All right, let's bring that up. You're overdriving the amplifier circuit, well, virtual analog circuit of the amplifier, right? So we've effectively added harmonics to something that only had one harmonic. So imagine what that does with a, you know, a saw or a square wave. Very cool. And we can just kind of right? And that sounds very Moogish, and that's because the mini Moog originally had, by design, the amplifier being overdriven. They didn't intend it, but it was overdriven in some revisions. Very cool. That is overdrive. Fold back. Okay, we'll go clip. Clip is, we'll look at this guy up here. Clip is once you drive it, you can't go above a certain point. Some circuits, by design, the analog circuits, they could handle going over 0 dB. Clipping, like in CD, or when you export a file over 0 dB, you get clipping, and it can't go above a certain point. Oops. Right? Kind of goes up, and then it stops. It's like, please, I can't go any higher than that. It hurts, right? So there's that. And effectively, we can turn a sine wave into a square, basically. And we have some very interesting harmonics there. Very cool. All right. With fold back, once it reaches this 0, it kind of goes backwards. So it folds back onto itself. And I'll show you what that looks like. Right. So here's kind of the point of return. It's kind of a soft saturation. Right. Folding back. Right. So it kind of, instead of going up, it went back down. It folded back on itself. And that's analog once again. Very cool. All right. So there's bit rate and sample rate reduction, decimate or bit crush. Decimate, what that does is that compresses the information horizontally, so over time, right? So that's what decimate does. Right, I might want to do that. Creates a stair step and adds interesting harmonics. So it creates a stair step over time. Bit crush creates a stair step in amplitude, so at a single point in time. Right, so you can get those crunchy basses. Right, so we've effectively turned a sine wave into something very digital and wave-table-y. Right, so with that, you got some really interesting harmonics from a simple sine wave. Right, so you can think of distortion kind of like the opposite of filtering. So what the filter does is we have this guy. We have cutoff, shaving off harmonics, enhancing the cutoff point. So once we get there, we can add harmonics by driving this. I apologize for shaking your house, but that is the relationship between distortion, and cutoff. It's a very interesting relationship that is very fun to do. And yeah, that would be my tutorial on distortion. There's also a filter drive here if you want to play around with that too. That's more of a utility for the filter. But yeah, hope you learned stuff, and take care and have a good one. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the phaser, chorus, and EQ. So phaser and chorus are time-based effects. What they do is they will take the signal and either add a bunch of all-pass filters or kind of separate it left and right and delay it by a certain amount of time to get a chorus. So we're going to go with phaser first. Phaser, think of the phaser as a bunch of all-pass filters. You can see that there. We'll move up the feedback, bring the rate down. Right, so we see kind of like a peak filter there. And what the center frequency does is that will move where that is. So depending on what kind of sound material we have. Right, so I see 1, 2, 3 filters here. And we have our feedback all the way. So let's go left to right. So center frequency changes where the peak is. Right, so we got like dubby-steppy stuff going on here. Spread and left-right offset will kind of stereoize the signal. The left and right will have different kind of peaks. And you can see that now. Really adds to the effect. We can spread them. Right. Width is a stereo width. We can bring that down so you get no stereo width. Good for like basses if you want more width, the left and right separation. You can move that up. And here's where the kind of magic is, the LFO rate and LFO gain. The gain is the amount, and the rate is syncable. And the feedback is the feedback of the all-pass filter. And wet-dry is obviously wet-dry. You can see what that's doing. Yeah, and that's pretty much phasing. You can't select how many poles you want, or how many stages, but it's all good. Chorus. Chorus, what that does is kind of like a choral. So it's, more than one voice. So what this does is it separates the left and right and kind of makes the signal wider. Right, so that's what it's like before. Right, we have the rate of how they're kind of moving about. Right, so it kind of sounds like a supersaw, but it's not. It's only one voice, but it's separated left and right. Dual mode, you can turn that on and off if you wish. And feedback is, of course, the amount of feedback kind of running itself back into the circuit. You don't want that much. So with chorus and phaser, and bumping up the voices, you get quite a big sound. Right, kind of old school sounding, which is fine by me. So right now we have an EQ here. We have 1 pole or 2 pole, and that is basically the intensity. So as you move up in poles, you get more of a filter. We have, when we turn this on, we have bass amount, so between 0 dB and 15 dB, treble amount between 0 and 15, and which frequency you want to kind of boost up. So this is kind of like just a basic filter. So say we want to boost the bass, we can boost this. Right, You can probably hear that a lot better on a treble kind of frequency. We'll boost that 8.5K, cool. Give it a bit of presence. Right, and that is with combination of everything basically. I'll just show you what that does. And 2-pole will be a bit more intense. You really want those highs to kind of crunch through. Right? Yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Hope you learned stuff and take care. Hey, what's up guys? In this video we're going to be going over the delay and reverb modules in Sylenth1. They run in series, so the delay always goes into the reverb, which is how it should be most of the time. So we're going to start with the delay. So we have our signal, our basic kind of saw wave here. We'll enable the delay. So what the delay does is it takes a signal and it kind of copies it and then plays it again, but it kind of fades it out. So it's kind of like an echo, but not really. It's a delay, basically. You have options for time delay of your left and your right. So for trancey stuff, you go an eighth and then a quarter. Right? So it kind of goes from left to right. So with that being said, ping pong, what it does is it will delay the right and the left, and it'll go back and forth. It's a really fun way for that, and you can enable that and, you know, unenable that if you want. If you want to kind of filter off the left and the right, or if you want to filter off the high cut and the low cut, you can filter that off, obviously. Right? So if we only want, we'll go 100% wet here. Right, so the delay is only for the higher frequencies because we set it like that, basically. And these are amounts, which is pretty fun. All right, cool. Then that's good for like, if you don't want to muddy up the low end, you don't want the low end to be bouncing around. That'll cause some issues there. What smear will do is it kind of degrades the signal, kind of like digital delays. And that's really nice. Sometimes adds some really nice smearing effects, especially when you use it with the reverb. It sounds really nice. Spread controls the stereo spread of the left and the right. So if you want like a mono, if you want it very wide, then you have that. Oops, good for, again, trance. Feedback is the amount of the delay. So if you want the delay to go on indefinitely, you go 100%. And that's kind of like a tape delay. It'll just go on kind of forever. So more feedback is the more the merrier, all right? And you have the width of your feedback here. So it gives it more of a stereo ishness to it, and of course wet and dry. Right, sounds pretty cool. All right, let's go to the reverb. Quite simple. You have your pre-delay, which is how, like, imagine the sound like smacking off the wall and then coming back to you. That's your pre-delay. Dampening is, say, if you are in, it's comparing like a cathedral with a lot of people in it, to a gymnasium, to a hall made entirely of shag carpet. It's how the sound is absorbed. Right? So more damping is more not as intense of a reverb. You're basically designing a room here. Size is the room size. Width is the stereo width. Right? So if you want to use like a mono mic, you have that option. And it's all well and good, and of course wet and dry. These two, the delay and the reverb, go really well together. So we'll do that. Right. Right, so it sounds rather pretty, and that's with both of them kind of feeding into each other. Well, the delay feeding into the reverb. You get a more interesting reverb when it has a delay feeding into it. All right, I've rambled on enough. Hope you learned stuff, and take care and have a good one. Here's what, guys. In this video, we're going to be going over the compressor of Sylenth1. It's the last in the chain. It's a really good way to kind of tame everything and kind of give it a bit of punch. So let's make something that would warrant that. So we'll do is we'll just bring this down. Let's cool. We'll bring that up just a tiny bit. Add some EQ. Alright, so right now it looks like a brick. And it's not very dynamic. What we can do is add a compressor. And I have an entire compressor series, but basically you have to know is 1-to-1 means no compression. And as you move up the ratio, you'll see here, we are kind of shaping the sound. You notice? Right, brick, sausage, right, a bit of a punch. And that's with the threshold here. Threshold will kind of bring it down. So right now, oh yeah, it acts in reverse. So it's kind of reverse to what you're used to. Right now, this threshold is 0 dB. We can bring it down by bringing it up, which is weird. You notice we have a bit of a transient there. The attack adjusts the transient shape, or the size of the transient, or the length of that transient. Right, so we've essentially something that sounds a little not as punchy or as transient too. Right, sounds louder, and it is, but it's only for like a short amount of time. And the release is when it goes back to normal, basically. Good for pads, good for a lot of things, and threshold controls the dynamics of it. So it's kind of like an amplifier envelope, but it's at the last stage. And it can sound pretty good if you use it correctly. All right, that is it for Sylenth1. Let me know what else you want for this, and I'll probably do it. Take care and have a good one.